The iron shackles cut into Olivia O'Malley's wrists as the wagon jostled over another rut in the unforgiving Arizona Territory Trail. Blood trickled down her fingers, but she refused to cry out, refused to give her captors the satisfaction. It was 1878, and in this harsh land where law was often what powerful men decided it should be, Olivia had committed what some considered an unforgivable sin. She had rejected Harold Wilcox's marriage proposal. "You'll change your mind after a few days under the desert sun," Harold had spat when his men dragged her from her small homestead. No woman refuses Harold Wilcox. The wagon hit another bump, and Olivia bit her lip to keep from crying out. She was 22 years old, and in the 3 years since her parents had died of fever, she'd managed their small ranch alone. That independence had made her a target. Harold wanted her land, which bordered his ever-expanding cattle empire, and he'd decided the easiest way to get it was to marry her. When she'd refused, he'd switched to more direct methods. The hot sun beat down mercilessly as the wagon rumbled along. They were far from town now, on a seldom-used trail that wound its way through rocky outcroppings and sparse desert vegetation. Harold rode ahead on his horse, occasionally glancing back at her with a smug expression. His 2 hired men drove the wagon, barely acknowledging her existence. Olivia tested the chains again, wincing as the metal bit deeper into her already raw skin. There would be no escaping these bonds without help. But who would help her out here? No one knew where she was, and Harold had made sure the sheriff, a man in his pocket, would look the other way. As the afternoon sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, they approached a small creek. Harold raised his hand, signaling the wagon to stop. "We'll camp here for the night," he announced. "Water the horses and set up camp." One of the men jumped down and approached Olivia. "Boss says you get water if you agree to his proposal." Olivia lifted her chin defiantly. "I would rather die of thirst." The man shrugged. "Suit yourself, lady." As dusk settled over the land, Olivia tried to fight the growing despair. Her mouth was parched, her lips cracked, and the pain in her wrists had become a constant throb. She closed her eyes and prayed for a miracle. That's when she heard it, the soft sound of approaching hoofbeats, different from the heavier tread of Harold's horses. She opened her eyes, straining to see in the growing darkness. A lone rider appeared at the edge of their makeshift camp, his silhouette outlined against the purple sky. He rode slowly, confidently, as if he had every right to be there. "Evening, folks," the rider called out, his voice carrying easily across the stillness. Harold stood quickly, hand moving to his gun. "State your business, stranger." The rider moved closer, and in the flickering light of the campfire, Olivia could see him more clearly. He was tall and lean, with broad shoulders and dark hair partially hidden beneath a dusty cowboy hat. His face was weathered from the sun, but he couldn't have been more than 26 or 27 years old. "Name's Yates Calloway," he said, tipping his hat. "Was heading to Silver Creek when I spotted your fire. Thought I might share your camp for the night, if you're amenable." Harold relaxed slightly but kept his hand near his pistol. "Silver Creek, huh? What business you got there?" "Delivering a message to the marshal," Yates replied easily, swinging down from his horse. It was then that his eyes found Olivia, chained to the wagon bed. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, a hardness that hadn't been there before. "That's quite a way to treat a lady," he remarked, his tone casual despite the tension in his shoulders. Harold scowled. "This ain't your concern, Calloway. The woman's my property." "Is that so?" Yates asked, glancing at Olivia again. "Didn't know people could be property in Arizona Territory." "She's my fiancée," Harold snapped. "Just needed some persuading to see things my way." Yates nodded slowly, as if considering this. "Well, I won't interfere in family matters. Mind if I water my horse? Harold gestured toward the creek. Help yourself. You can stay for the night, but you'll be gone at first light. As Yates led his horse to the water, Olivia watched him carefully. There was something about the way he moved, a quiet confidence that suggested he was more than the simple messenger he claimed to be. When darkness fully settled, Harold and one of his men retired to their bedrolls, leaving the other man on watch. Olivia remained chained to the wagon, trying to find a position that would allow her some rest despite the painful bonds. Hours passed. The guard nodded off, his chin dropping to his chest. In the silence, Olivia heard soft footsteps approaching. She tensed, fear coursing through her until she saw Yates's face illuminated by the moonlight. He pressed a finger to his lips, warning her to be quiet. In his other hand he held a canteen. Carefully he brought it to her lips, allowing her to drink deeply. The cool water was the sweetest thing she'd ever tasted. "Thank you," she whispered when she'd had enough. Yates studied her for a moment. "Those chains look painful." "They are." He glanced toward the sleeping men. "What's your name?" "Olivia O'Malley." "And you're not really engaged to that man, are you, Miss O'Malley?" Olivia shook her head. "He wants my land." When I refused his proposal, he decided to take matters into his own hands. Yates's jaw tightened. "I thought as much." He studied the chains binding her to the wagon. "These will need a key, or tools I don't have with me." Despair washed over Olivia again. "Then there's nothing to be done." "I didn't say that," Yates replied, his voice barely audible. "I need you to trust me, Miss O'Malley. Things might get complicated in the morning, but I give you my word, you won't be leaving with Wilcox." Before she could ask what he meant, he slipped away, returning to his bedroll on the other side of the camp. Olivia stared after him, hope and doubt warring within her. Could she trust this stranger? What choice did she have? Morning came with the harsh light of the desert sun. Harold was the first to rise, kicking his men awake. Yates was already up, calmly making coffee over the remnants of last night's fire. "Morning," he called cheerfully. "Made some coffee if anyone's interested." Harold grunted but accepted a cup. As the men prepared to break camp, Yates casually approached the wagon where Olivia remained chained. "That's close enough," Harold warned, his hand dropping to his gun. Yates stopped, raising his hands slightly. "Just wanted to say goodbye to the lady. Seems like the polite thing to do." Harold's eyes narrowed. "Say your piece and get moving, Calloway." Yates turned to Olivia, and something in his expression made her heart beat faster. "It's been a pleasure meeting you, Miss O'Malley. I hope your situation improves." Before anyone could react, Yates's hand flashed to his holster. His gun appeared as if by magic, and 2 shots rang out in quick succession. Harold's men dropped to the ground, each clutching a wounded shoulder, their guns falling uselessly beside them. Harold had barely drawn his weapon when Yates's gun swung toward him. "I wouldn't," Yates advised calmly. "Who the hell are you?" Harold demanded, his face pale with rage. "Someone who doesn't much care for men who kidnap women," Yates replied. "Now, toss that gun away and get the key to those chains." Harold hesitated, then slowly dropped his gun. "You're making a big mistake, Calloway. I own half the county. There's nowhere you can hide. I'll take my chances." Yates kept his gun trained on Harold as the man reluctantly produced a small key from his pocket. "Now unlock her." Carefully, Harold approached Olivia, fumbling with the key. As the shackles fell away, Olivia couldn't contain a small gasp of relief, rubbing her raw, bloodied wrists. "Now step back," Yates ordered Harold, who complied with hatred burning in his eyes. Yates moved to Olivia's side, never lowering his gun. "Can you stand?" Olivia nodded, though her legs felt weak after being restrained for so long. She rose shakily, and Yates's free hand steadied her elbow. "Now, here's what's going to happen," Yates announced to Harold and his wounded men. "Miss O'Malley and I are going to take your horses and supplies. You three can walk back to wherever you came from." "You'll regret this," Harold snarled. "I doubt that," Yates replied evenly. He turned to Olivia. "Can you ride?" "Yes," she said, finding her voice at last. Yates nodded approvingly. "Good. Get whatever you need from the wagon." As Olivia gathered a few supplies, Yates kept his gun trained on the three men. When she returned to his side, he backed toward the horses, helping her mount one while keeping watch. Once they were both mounted, Yates finally lowered his gun. "I'd suggest you gentlemen start walking. It's going to be a hot day." With that, he turned his horse and led the way away from the camp, Olivia following close behind. They rode in silence for nearly an hour, putting distance between themselves and Harold's group. When they reached a ridge overlooking a vast expanse of desert, Yates finally slowed his horse. "Are you all right?" he asked, his eyes scanning her face with genuine concern. Olivia nodded, though tears suddenly threatened to spill over. The reality of her narrow escape was hitting her full force. "Thank you," she managed to say. "You saved my life." Yates's expression softened. "No one deserves to be treated like that." He studied her injured wrists. "We should clean those wounds. There's a small stream not far from here." As they rode side by side, Olivia studied her rescuer. "You're not really a messenger, are you?" A small smile played at the corners of Yates's mouth. "Not exactly, no." "Then who are you?" He was quiet for a moment. "I used to ride with the Texas Rangers. Now I take jobs that need doing, jobs the law can't or won't handle." "A bounty hunter?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "Other times, just a man trying to make things right where I can." They reached the stream, and Yates helped Olivia dismount. His touch was gentle but firm, and despite everything she'd been through, she felt safe with him. Kneeling by the water, Yates carefully cleaned the wounds on her wrists, his rough hands unexpectedly tender. "These are deep," he murmured. "But they should heal clean if we keep them from festering." "How did you know?" Olivia asked. "Last night. How did you know I wasn't really his fiancée?" Yates's blue eyes met hers. "No man chains a woman he truly cares for, and no woman looks at her intended the way you looked at him, like you'd rather face a rattlesnake." That drew a small laugh from Olivia, surprising herself. "You're observant, Mr. Calloway." "Yates," he corrected. "And in my line of work, missing details can get you killed." As he wrapped clean strips of cloth around her wrists, Olivia studied his face. The sun had etched lines around his eyes, but they crinkled pleasantly when he smiled, as he did now. "What happens now?" she asked. "That depends on you," Yates replied. "I can take you to Silver Creek. There's a real marshal there who won't be in Wilcox's pocket. Or I can escort you back to your ranch, though Wilcox might come looking for you there." Olivia considered her options. "My ranch is all I have. It was my parents' legacy to me. I can't abandon it." Yates nodded, as if he'd expected this answer. "Then we head for your ranch, but we'll need to be careful. Men like Wilcox don't take kindly to being crossed." They traveled for 2 days, taking a circuitous route to avoid any of Harold's men who might be searching for them. During those days, Olivia learned more about Yates Calloway. He'd grown up in Texas, the son of a rancher who'd lost everything to cattle rustlers. He joined the Rangers young, determined to bring justice to those who preyed on others. But the strictures of the law had eventually chafed, and he'd struck out on his own, using his skills to help those who had nowhere else to turn. In turn, Olivia told him about her own life, the struggle to maintain the ranch after her parents' deaths. The pressure from neighboring ranchers like Harold, who saw her as easy prey, the determination that had kept her going despite it all. On the evening of the second day, as they sat beside a small fire, Yates said, "You're a remarkable woman, Olivia O'Malley. Most would have given up that ranch long ago." Olivia felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "It's not just land to me. It's home. The only one I've ever known." "I understand that," Yates said softly. "Home is worth fighting for." Their eyes met across the fire, and something passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. Olivia looked away first, suddenly aware of her heart beating faster. They reached her ranch the following afternoon. The small house and outbuildings appeared undisturbed, though Olivia's milk cow complained loudly at her prolonged absence. "Someone should have a stern talk with your ranching skills," Yates teased as the cow butted impatiently against Olivia's hand. "She's just temperamental," Olivia defended, laughing despite herself. It felt strange to laugh after everything that had happened, but also necessary, a reminder that life continued. As Yates helped her settle the horses, Olivia found herself watching him, noting the easy way he moved, the quiet competence in everything he did. When he caught her looking, she quickly turned away, busying herself with unnecessary tasks. That evening, Olivia cooked a proper meal, their first since her rescue, using supplies from her pantry. They ate at the small table in her kitchen, the domesticity of the scene at odds with the danger they both knew still lurked. "Wilcox will come," Yates said finally, setting down his fork. "You know that, don't you?" Olivia nodded. "I've always known he wouldn't give up easily. But I won't be driven from my home." "Then we need to prepare," Yates said. "How well do you shoot?" "Well enough. My father taught me." "Good. That's a start." Over the next few days, they worked together to fortify the ranch. Yates repaired the fences, reinforced the doors and windows, and taught Olivia tactical positions from which to defend her property. In the evenings, they would sit on her porch, watching the sunset and talking about everything and nothing. Olivia found herself looking forward to those quiet moments, to the sound of Yates's voice as he told stories of his travels, to the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. It was dangerous, she knew, to feel this way about a man who would inevitably ride away when the danger passed. Yet she couldn't help herself. On the fifth day, as they worked together mending a section of corral, their hands brushed. Olivia felt a jolt of awareness shoot through her, and when she looked up, Yates was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Olivia," he began, his voice lower than usual. But whatever he'd been about to say was lost as the sound of approaching riders reached them. Yates's expression changed instantly, all softness vanishing as he reached for his gun. "Get to the house," he ordered. "Take position at the north window like we practiced." Olivia didn't argue. She ran for the house, grabbing her rifle from its place by the door. Through the window, she counted 5 riders approaching, Harold Wilcox in the lead, flanked by 4 men who weren't the ones from the kidnapping attempt. Yates stood in the yard, seemingly relaxed but with his hand resting near his holster. "That's far enough," he called when the riders were still 30 yards out. Harold and his men reined in their horses. "Calloway," Harold spat, "should have known I'd find you here." "Mr. Wilcox," Yates replied calmly, "I was hoping you'd learned your lesson about trespassing on Miss O'Malley's property." "This isn't over," Harold said. "That woman is going to be my wife, and this land will be mine. You're just postponing the inevitable." "I don't see it that way," Yates replied. "Miss O'Malley has made her wishes clear. She's not interested in your proposal or your company. I suggest you respect that and move on." Harold laughed, an ugly sound. "And who's going to make me? You? 1 man against 5. "If necessary," Yates said, and something in his tone made even Harold hesitate. From her position at the window, Olivia watched the tension build. She kept her rifle trained on the riders, ready to provide support if needed. "I've been asking around about you, Calloway," Harold said at last. "Seems you've made quite a name for yourself, but even you can't watch her forever. Sooner or later you'll ride on, and when you do, I'll be waiting." "That's where you're wrong," Yates replied. "Miss O'Malley isn't alone anymore. She has friends in Silver Creek now, including the marshal, who's very interested in your kidnapping activities." Harold's face darkened. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Yates reached slowly into his vest pocket and withdrew a folded paper. "This is a warrant for your arrest, Wilcox. Signed by Marshal Jenkins of Silver Creek. Seems kidnapping is still a crime in Arizona territory, even for men who think they own half the county." Olivia gasped softly. Yates hadn't mentioned a warrant or contacting any marshal. Harold and his men exchanged uneasy glances. "You expect me to believe you're here to arrest me?" One man. "I don't expect to arrest you today," Yates replied evenly. "I'm giving you a choice. You can leave Miss O'Malley alone permanently and I'll tear up this warrant. Or you can continue this vendetta and I'll make it my personal mission to see you behind bars." "Your choice." For a long moment no one spoke. Then Harold spat on the ground. "This isn't over, Calloway." "Actually, it is," Yates said. "Because if you or any of your men come within a mile of this ranch again, I won't bother with a trial. Do we understand each other?" The threat hung in the air, all the more menacing for its quiet delivery. Harold's men shifted uncomfortably in their saddles. Finally, Harold yanked his horse around. "Come on, boys. We're wasting time here." As they turned to go, he called over his shoulder, "You've made a powerful enemy today, Calloway." "Wouldn't be the first time," Yates replied. They watched as the riders disappeared down the road. Only when they were completely out of sight did Olivia emerge from the house, her rifle still in her hands. "Is it really over?" she asked, scarcely daring to hope. Yates tucked the paper back into his pocket. "Men like Wilcox understand one thing, power. He now knows that hurting you means dealing with me, and that's not a fight he's willing to take on." "The warrant." A small smile touched Yates's lips. "Real enough. I sent a message to Marshal Jenkins while you were asleep our first night here. He's an old friend and no friend of men who chain women to wagons." Relief flooded through Olivia, making her legs weak. She swayed slightly, and Yates was instantly at her side, his arms supporting her. "Easy," he murmured. "It's been a long few days." Olivia looked up into his face, so close to hers. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Something changed in Yates's expression, a softening, a vulnerability she hadn't seen before. "Olivia," he said, her name almost a caress. Before either of them could say more, the sound of an approaching wagon caught their attention. They turned to see an elderly couple coming up the road. "That's the Petersons," Olivia said, recognizing her neighbors. "They have the farm to the east." The wagon pulled up in front of the house, and Mrs. Peterson waved frantically. "Olivia, thank goodness you're all right. We've been so worried." As the couple climbed down from their wagon, Olivia introduced them to Yates, explaining only that he was a friend who had been helping around the ranch. "Well, we're mighty glad to see you have help," Mr. Peterson said, eyeing Yates appraisingly. "Especially with that Wilcox fellow causing trouble. We just passed him, and his men on the road looked like they'd been eating lemons. The lot of them." Mrs. Peterson tooted disapprovingly. "That man has been nothing but trouble since he moved into these parts. Thinks because he has money, he can do as he pleases." They stayed for coffee, filling Olivia in on the local gossip she'd missed. Throughout their visit, Yates remained politely distant, speaking only when addressed directly. Yet Olivia was acutely aware of his presence, of the way his eyes would find hers across the room. When the Petersons finally departed, promising to spread the word that Olivia was safe and well, an awkward silence fell between Olivia and Yates. "I should check the horses," Yates said abruptly, heading for the door. "Yates?" Olivia called after him, her heart suddenly pounding. "Wait." He paused, his hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn. "Were you planning to leave?" she asked quietly. "Now that the danger's past?" Slowly he turned to face her. I assumed you'd want your life back. Your privacy." Olivia took a step toward him. "What if I don't want you to go?" The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Yates's expression was unreadable, but his eyes told her everything she needed to know. "Olivia," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I'm not the kind of man who stays in one place. I've never had a home, not really." "Maybe it's time you did," she replied softly. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just short of touching her. "You don't know what you're saying. You've been through a terrible ordeal." "Your judgment is perfectly clear," she interrupted. "I know exactly what I'm saying, Yates Calloway. I'm saying that in 5 days, I've come to care for you more than I thought possible. I'm saying that the thought of you riding away makes me feel like I'm being chained to that wagon all over again." Yates reached out then, his fingers gently tracing the healing marks on her wrists. "I broke those chains," he murmured. "Yes," she agreed, and whispered, "Now you're free. But freedom isn't much use if you're alone." His hand moved from her wrist to cup her cheek. "Are you sure, Olivia? Really sure? Because if I stay, I don't think I'll ever be able to leave." In answer, Olivia rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, a question being asked and answered, but it quickly deepened into something more urgent, more primal. Yates's arms encircled her, drawing her against the solid warmth of his chest. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Yates rested his forehead against hers. "I never believed in fate," he said quietly, "until I saw you chained to that wagon. Something in me knew, even then, that my life was about to change forever." "For the better, I hope," Olivia replied, smiling up at him. "Beyond anything I could have imagined." In the days that followed, they fell into a comfortable routine. Yates proved himself as skilled with ranch work as he was with a gun, and under their combined efforts, the O'Malley ranch began to flourish as it hadn't since Olivia's parents were alive. Word spread quickly through the county that Olivia O'Malley was under the protection of Yates Calloway, and Harold Wilcox, perhaps wisely, kept his distance. The warrant remained unused, a silent threat that proved unnecessary as Harold eventually sold his holdings and moved east, reportedly after receiving a private visit from Marshal Jenkins. 3 months after their first meeting, on a crisp autumn evening, Yates and Olivia sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and crimson. "I've been thinking," Yates said, his arm comfortably around Olivia's shoulders. "A dangerous pastime," she teased, leaning into his warmth. He chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I've been thinking about names." Olivia looked up at him, puzzled. "Names?" "For the ranch," he clarified. "O'Malley Ranch is fine, but if we're going to be partners in every sense, maybe it should reflect both of us." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. "Partners in every sense?" Yates shifted, suddenly looking uncharacteristically nervous. "That is, if you'll have me as your husband." Joy bubbled up inside Olivia, threatening to overflow. "Are you asking me to marry you, Yates Calloway? I'm not doing a very good job of it, am I?" he said ruefully. He slid from the swing onto one knee before her, taking her hands in his. The scars from the chains were still visible on her wrists, a reminder of how they'd found each other. "Olivia O'Malley, You are the strongest, most beautiful woman I've ever known. You've given me something I never thought I'd have: a home, a purpose beyond wandering. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears of happiness blurred Olivia's vision. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Yates's smile was radiant as he rose to gather her in his arms, sealing their promise with a kiss that spoke of a future neither had dared to dream of before fate brought them together on a lonely desert trail. 1 year later, Olivia stood in the doorway of their home, watching as Yates taught their neighbor's young son how to properly saddle a horse. The ranch, now called Freedom Ridge, had prospered under their care. They'd expanded their herds, hired 2 ranch hands, and built a reputation for fair dealing throughout the territory. As Yates looked up and caught her watching, his face broke into the smile that still made her heart race. He said something to the boy, then crossed the yard to join her. "What are you thinking about, Mrs. Calloway?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. Olivia leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I was thinking about chains," she admitted, "about how sometimes freedom comes in the most unexpected ways." Yates's arms tightened around her. "I set out to break your chains," he murmured against her hair, never imagining I was breaking my own as well. Olivia turned in his embrace to face him. "Do you ever miss it? The wandering, the adventure?" "Not for a moment," he replied without hesitation. "Everything I need is right here." His hand moved to rest gently on the slight swell of her abdomen, where their first child was just beginning to show. "Everything I never knew I wanted." As the sun set on another day at Freedom Ridge, Olivia thought about the journey that had brought them here, a journey that had begun in pain and fear, but had led to a love stronger than any chains. In Yates's arms, she had found not just freedom, but a home for her heart. And as his lips found hers in a kiss that promised forever, Olivia knew that some chains, the ones forged of love and commitment, were worth wearing for a lifetime.